All right, here we is. Where is we? Where are we? We're back in the garage, and I'm going to talk today about these old Jeeps, these Jeepster Commandos specifically, but I'm sure this advice will probably help with pretty much any old classic Jeep. Now, this Jeep and most Jeepsters, they all came with manual brakes. So what that means is that the brake setup has no assist to it. So whatever effort you push, as hard as you push it, that's how well the brakes are going to work. So one of the best upgrades you can make to these old Jeeps is to add power brakes to help you have an easier stop, be more reactive, have a lot better brake feel, all of those wonderful things. And when it comes to the Jeepsters, there's really two main options to improve the braking on these. So the first thing you have is vacuum boost brakes, or you have Hydroboost brakes. Now, I've run both vacuum boost and Hydroboost brakes on this Jeepster here, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the pros and the cons of each system. For the vacuum brake booster, I personally went with a Parts Dude 4x4 setup. It's a complete setup. So the pros with that are going to be that one, it bolts directly into the firewall. It comes with everything you're going to need. There's no questions about how it works. What if you're going to need to order special parts? It comes with instructions on how to do it. It's really straightforward. It uses a couple of adapter blocks that bolt into the stock holes in the firewall that then adapt to a bracket, and then you have your brake booster and your master cylinder. And so all of it is in one piece. And so that to me is a really straightforward, simple way to get power brakes on your classic Jeepster. And again, that's a complete kit from Parts Dude 4x4. Sam is awesome. He helped put on the 55th Jeepster Commando event, or the 50th Jeep Commando event a couple years ago. I've met him. He's wonderful. He's great to work with. I've actually ordered a lot of parts from him. He's not sponsoring it. It's not a plug or anything, but he's just really good. I've had great success with what he does supply. It's quality. He's very helpful. So if you're looking for a vacuum boost setup, that's a great way to do it. And so let's dive in a little bit what that looks like. I'll just pull up some clips here and show you how that looks. You're going to end up having the 8-inch dual diaphragm booster. That's going to have a check valve in it. It's going to come with an OEM style master cylinder with ports on the side. It's also going to come with that firewall bracket with adjustable pedal rod, so then you can get that brake pedal to an appropriate height to fit where you want it to be. It's going to have those mounting blocks that are going to bolt directly into the firewall and then into the bracket as well. And it's going to come with a boot to seal everything up, the brake tube, a brake switch that's going to attach to that master cylinder, and then step-by-step instructions. So it's a great, simple, easy way to get power brakes on your Jeepster. If you're looking for that, that's something that you can do. Now, are there some cons when you're going with a vacuum boost setup like that? The only couple of cons might be that you do need to make sure you have adequate vacuum to run it. The sizing of it might be a little bit larger than the Hydroboost setup, a little bit bigger in circumference, or maybe a little bit longer. I can't remember exactly, but so it doesn't fit in quite the same as the Hydroboost setup would. And then, total cost out the door, last I looked, it was $455 plus shipping and taxes and all that good stuff. And you have everything you need. So there's no question mark, there's no guesswork on, do I need to find different parts or anything like that? If that's appealing to you, this could be a great way for you to get power brakes on your Jeep. Now for me, I did use that, but the other piece to the vacuum boost that is a little bit of a con is that it might not provide adequate braking power once you get to bigger tires or extra low gearing, all of those different types of things. And so for me, I went ahead and made the decision to swap from vacuum to Hydroboost brakes. And so let's dive a little bit into how I did that and the parts I used. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun. Ooh, boy. I made sure to not clean it. That way you guys know I use it. So now that the hood's open, this is the Hydroboost setup. When it comes to the Hydroboost, there are some major pros to it. One, increased stopping power, or at least in my experience, I've had much better stopping power with a Hydroboost over the vacuum. It's going to allow for me to run larger tires and lower gearing without actually going through the brakes. I have enough braking power to actually stop the vehicle. So those are some major pros to me on why to use this. I also have to worry about having vacuum from the motor to run it. It's all hydraulic, so so that's another pro. Or if you're running a motor, maybe like a diesel or something where there isn't an actual vacuum to hook onto, the Hydroboost might be a great choice for you. Now, when it comes to cons, there were a few cons with this setup over the vacuum boost. First being, if you don't have the knowledge or skill set or ability to fabricate, this could be more difficult. I wasn't able to find any bolt-in solutions for Hydroboost, so I had to do some welding, buy some different pieces and kits. I'll talk about that. But for me, that was kind of a con. The size on this could also be, you know, a con over the vacuum, depending on your packaging. The setup I used, it did end up being fairly long, and that's just because of the master cylinder that I chose, but there are some other master cylinders that seem to work well that can be a little bit shorter. I also could have done something with the push rod and made it shorter as well to make the packaging a lot tighter. But overall, this fit in here really nicely with minimal effort, and so that's the route I chose. And so let's dive in a little bit on how I actually installed this Hydroboost brakes. So the nice thing is I do still have the Hydroboost installed. So with the vacuum boost, hopefully all the pictures and documents were helpful, but with this, I'll show you exactly what was done. So starting at the firewall, I have my adjustable proportioning valve mounted to the firewall, and so that's just to be able to adjust the bite on the front versus the rear brakes and get it to stop properly. And then to attach the Hydroboost setup, I actually ordered this bracket off of eBay. I'll make sure to link to this exact one that I ordered. It was amazing working with the gentleman. I ordered it was for a CJ originally, and I thought, oh, I'm gonna have to do a bunch of modification, get everything to work and fit. But before he sent it, he actually emailed me and asked me what was it going on, what Hydroboost setup am I using, what was the original length for the stock push rod that goes to the pedal versus the new Hydroboost pedal. So he did all the math, got everything set up to where this tube here actually is the exact length to set that brake pedal in the exact spot where the stock one was located. He also had the actual template for the stock mounting holes for the firewall, and so it's basically sent in 4 pieces. So you have the piece that bolts to the firewall, an adapter tube, and then a piece that's welded to that. So all this got welded together, and then you add this piece to the back of the Hydroboost, and then the Hydroboost bolts in, and it all works seamlessly. So I cannot recommend any more this gentleman here. He did a great job, made it super easy to get this installed. It looks really clean. So if you're able to weld, it's really straightforward, really simple. Or if you can just send this to a welder, it literally keys into place and it just welds up. So you don't have to worry about getting it to fit right. It just went right away. So then moving on to the booster itself, there's a few different choices. I'm just going to talk from my personal experience. I went ahead and pulled Hydroboost brakes from an Astrovan. So I went to the local pull apart. I pulled this for, you know, 20 bucks or whatever it was. It really wasn't very expensive, and then made it work. So luckily everything's working fine. It didn't seem like it needed a rebuild or anything of that nature. So it's been great. And then lastly, the master cylinder itself. I'll leave a link for this as well. There's some different pieces on making sure you get the right size, that kind of thing. But this seems to work perfectly with my setup. Overall, this is basically it. You have the adapter, your Hydroboost, and your master cylinder, and then all of that gets bolted together, and it just really works great. The only other piece, as I mentioned with this, is that hydraulic fluids actually was going to run your brake setup. And so, as I mentioned in a previous video, I use these field serviceable fittings for my power steering, and so those all run nice and neat, and then if anything was to ever break, I can service it out in the field. Now, what I also did is I made sure to upgrade my old style power steering pump to this newer TC2 type power steering pump that's down here. I used a Brennan's Garage kit for that. I'll talk about that in another video upcoming. And then I included this remote PSC power steering reservoir, and so that allowed me to have a return line for both the Hydroboost and the power steering to come into one place and work really nicely. And my brother's, when we did his, he went ahead and kept just a traditional style pump, and so you just have to tee the return from your Hydroboost into the pump. And really what you just need to make sure is that the flow of the return from the Hydroboost flows into the tee to not create any restriction from the return line from the power steering pump. So overall, this is what the setup looks like. It's great. It works really well. Definitely very high on my list of recommendations for upgrades that you should make on your Jeepster. If there's anything I missed or you have questions about, make sure to leave it in the comments below, and hopefully this gave you something to work from when trying to figure out which route is best for you and upgrading the brakes on your Jeepster or classic Jeep in general.